Rayan stood alone in his small apartment, the place he had moved into after the divorce. The silence around him felt heavy. The walls were empty, and his heart felt the same. The past few months had been hard. His marriage with Mina had ended, not because of anger or betrayal, but because they had slowly drifted apart. They both tried to fix it, but sometimes love fades in quiet ways. It was a cloudy morning when he decided to clean the attic. The landlord had said he could use it for storage, and Rayan thought a bit of cleaning would help clear his mind. As he climbed the narrow stairs, dust filled the air. Old furniture, boxes, and forgotten items lay scattered. Rayan began to move things one by one until his hand brushed against a large frame covered in cloth. When he pulled off the cloth, he saw a painting. It was old but still beautiful. The painting showed a calm river with a small wooden bridge crossing it. Trees surrounded the water, and a warm light filled the scene. Rayan recognized it at once. It was painted by Mina's grandfather, an old artist named Mr. Rahim. Rayan remembered the old man well. Mr. Rahim had always been kind to him. He often spoke with soft wisdom and loved painting nature. Before Rayan and Mina got married, Mr. Rahim gave them this painting as a gift. He said it was a blessing for peace and understanding. After the divorce, Rayan had forgotten all about it. He thought Mina had taken it with her, but somehow it had ended up here. He sat on the floor and stared at the painting for a long time. Something about it felt different now. The colors seemed deeper, and there was a strange glow on the bridge. He leaned closer and noticed faint marks near the bottom right corner. They looked like scratches at first, but when he tilted the frame under the light, they formed small letters. Rayan frowned and rubbed the surface gently. The letters were arranged like a message, almost hidden under the layers of paint. It looked like a code or a secret signature. He could make out a few words. For those who seek truth. His heart beat faster. He remembered that Mr. Rahim had a habit of hiding small details in his art. Once, he had told Rayan, "Every painting has a soul. Some souls whisper secrets only when someone truly looks." At that time, Rayan thought it was just poetic talk, but now it felt real. Rayan carried the painting downstairs and placed it on the table. He turned off all distractions and began to study it. The river curved gently to the left, and the light on the water formed a strange reflection. When he followed the reflection with his eyes, he noticed something odd. The shape of the reflection resembled a small house, one that did not exist in the main picture. It was hidden within the colors of the water. He took a magnifying glass from a drawer and looked closely. The house had a door marked with a small symbol, a crescent moon inside a square. Rayan felt a shiver run through him. He remembered seeing the same symbol once before. It was carved on a wooden box that Mr. Rahim used to keep in his study. The old man never opened it in front of anyone. When Rayan had asked about it, he only smiled and said, "Some boxes open only when the heart is ready." Now that same symbol appeared in the painting. Could it be a clue? Rayan sat back and tried to think. Why would Mina's grandfather leave such a message? And why now, after the divorce? He wondered if Mina knew about it. She had always been close to her grandfather. Maybe this was something meant for both of them. He reached for his phone, then stopped. They had not spoken since the separation papers were signed. Calling her now would be strange. But curiosity began to grow stronger than hesitation. Before he could decide, his phone buzzed. It was a message from Mina. She rarely texted him anymore, so he felt a sudden wave of surprise. The message said, "I found something of Grandpa's. We need to talk." Rayan stared at the screen. His fingers froze. What were the chances that she would message him on the same day he found the painting? He quickly typed back, "I also found something of his. When can we meet?" Her reply came after a few minutes. "Tomorrow evening, the old cafe near the bridge." The same bridge from the painting flashed in his mind. The coincidence was too strong to ignore. That night, Rayan could not sleep. He sat by the painting, studying it under the dim light. He remembered moments with Mr. Rahim, especially one afternoon when the old man spoke about hidden meanings in art. He said that sometimes truth was painted in silence, not in words. Rayan began to wonder if this painting was more than a message. Maybe it was a guide. He tried to take a photo of the hidden letters, but they faded when captured by the phone camera. Only the human eye could see them clearly. This made the painting feel alive, as if it wanted to be understood by feeling, not by technology. The next morning, Rayan got ready early. He went to a local art shop and bought a cleaning cloth and a special light for examining old paintings. The shopkeeper was an elderly man who seemed to know about old artworks. When Rayan told him about the marks, the shopkeeper looked interested. Some artists use special ink that glows under certain light. The man said, "If your painting has hidden writing, try using this filter." He handed Rayan a small flashlight with a colored lens. Rayan thanked him and hurried home. When he shined the light over the painting, the hidden letters became clearer. This time he could read them fully. They said, "Seek the place where memories rest, and you shall find what was lost." Rayan whispered the words slowly. The place where memories rest. What could that mean? He thought about Mr. Rahim's favorite places. The old man loved two spots the most, the river park and the art studio behind his house. But the studio had been closed for years after his death. Only family members could enter. He began to believe that the clue might lead there. Perhaps the old artist left something hidden in his studio. The thought filled Rayan with both fear and hope. Fear because stepping back into that world would bring back memories of Mina, and hope because maybe this mystery could bring closure to the pain he still carried. Evening came, and he dressed neatly. He took the painting with him, wrapped carefully in brown paper. As he walked toward the cafe, he felt a strange mix of emotions. The sky was turning orange, and the air carried the smell of rain. When he reached the cafe, Mina was already there. She looked calm but tired. Time had changed both of them. On the table in front of her was a small envelope. When she saw him, she gave a polite smile. "Rayan," she said softly, "I didn't think you'd reply." "I wasn't planning to," he answered gently. "But your message made me curious. You said you found something." She nodded and slid the envelope toward him. "It's a letter from Grandpa. I found it behind one of his old sketches. He mentioned your name." Rayan felt his breath catch for a moment. He opened the envelope carefully. Inside was a folded note written in the same handwriting he remembered. It read, "When time separates, art unites. Find the river's truth and you both will understand." Rayan looked up. Mina's eyes met his. Neither spoke for a moment. The hidden message had just begun to unfold. Rayan and Mina sat across from each other at the small cafe table. The soft sound of rain tapped against the window while the smell of coffee filled the air. Both of them looked at the letter in silence. Rayan held it carefully as if it might fall apart if he breathed too hard. The words written by Mr. Rahim echoed in his mind again and again. "When time separates, art unites. Find the river's truth and you both will understand." Rayan finally looked up. "Do you know what he meant by the river's truth?" he asked gently. Mina shook her head. "I have no idea. But Grandpa always loved the river near his old house. He used to call it the River of Memories." Rayan nodded slowly. "Yes, the same river in the painting." "Maybe that's what he meant." Mina glanced at the wrapped painting beside him. "You still have it?" "Yes," he said. "I found it yesterday in the attic. I think the message in this letter is connected to it." She leaned forward slightly. "Grandpa always said his art carried secrets for those who truly looked. Maybe he left something there for us to find." For a moment, they both fell silent. The rain outside grew stronger, and the world seemed smaller, as if the cafe existed in its own bubble of time. Finally, Mina said, "Do you want to go there tomorrow? To the river?" Rayan hesitated. The thought of going somewhere with her again felt strange. They had not shared a journey since before the divorce. But the mystery of Mr. Rahim's words felt too strong to ignore. He nodded. "Yes, tomorrow morning." When they left the cafe, Rayan carried the painting carefully under his arm. The streets glistened with rain, and his reflection followed him in every puddle. Something inside him felt alive again, as if the old man's message had opened a door he didn't know existed. The next day, the sky was clear. Mina waited near the edge of town in her small car. When Rayan arrived, she smiled faintly. It was an awkward smile, the kind shared by two people who once knew everything about each other but now were strangers again. They drove quietly for a long time. The road wound through fields and trees until the river appeared in the distance. It shimmered under the morning sun. The water moved calmly and birds flew low across the surface. When they reached the spot, Rayan stepped out first and took a deep breath. The air smelled fresh and clean. The sound of flowing water filled his ears. He remembered coming here with Mr. Rahim years ago. The old man had once said, "Every river carries stories. If you listen carefully, you can hear them whisper." Mina walked beside him, holding the letter in her hand. Grandpa used to sit on that rock near the bridge, she said softly. He painted here almost every week. Rayan nodded and placed the painting against a tree. He opened the wrapping and held it up, comparing it with the real river in front of them. The resemblance was perfect, but there was one difference. In the painting, the bridge had a small lantern hanging from its post, while the real bridge had no lantern at all. He pointed toward it. Look, that lantern is not here anymore. Maybe it's important. Mina frowned and stepped closer. Wait, I remember something. Grandpa once told me that when he painted that lantern, he hid something near it. He laughed and said, "One day someone will find what I left behind." I thought it was a joke. Rayan felt his heart race. Without wasting time, he walked toward the bridge. The old wood creaked under his steps. The post where the lantern had once hung was still there, though worn and covered with moss. He began to search around the base, brushing away leaves and dirt. After a few minutes, his fingers touched something hard. He knelt down and pulled out a small metal box, rusty but still sealed. Mina gasped softly behind him. He wiped the dirt off and turned the box in his hands. The same crescent moon symbol was engraved on its lid. The same one from the painting's reflection. It's Grandpa's mark, Mina whispered. Rayan opened the box carefully. Inside, wrapped in an old cloth, was a folded piece of paper and a small key. The paper looked fragile with age. When he unfolded it, he saw more of Mr. Rahim's handwriting. My dear ones, it began. If you are reading this, it means the time has come for you both to see what was hidden beneath pain and distance. The river carries truth, but the heart must carry courage. Follow the key and you will find what was left unfinished. Rayan turned the small key in his hand. Follow the key, he said quietly. Mina looked puzzled. Do you think it opens something? He nodded. Maybe his old studio. Remember, it was always locked after his death. Mina's eyes widened. Yes, the key to the studio was never found. My parents tried to open it once, but the lock was different. Maybe this is it. The two stood in silence for a moment, the sound of the river flowing beside them. The sunlight shimmered on the water, and the air felt charged with hidden meaning. Rayan placed the paper back in the box and handed it to Mina. We should go there, today. She agreed. They drove back toward the town, the box resting on the seat between them. Neither spoke much. Both were lost in thought. Memories from their marriage flashed through Rayan's mind. Moments of laughter, quiet dinners, and also the silence that had grown between them. When they reached Mr. Rahim's old house, the garden was covered in overgrown grass. The paint on the walls had faded. The studio stood behind the house, a small wooden building with windows covered in dust. Rayan stepped closer and tried the door. It was locked, just as Mina said. He took out the small key and inserted it carefully. The lock clicked open. Inside, the air smelled of old paint and wood. Sunlight entered through cracks in the roof, creating golden lines across the floor. Paintings were stacked against the walls, some unfinished, others covered with cloth. Mina walked slowly, her hand brushing across the dusty tables. It feels like he's still here, she said softly. Rayan looked around until his eyes caught something on the far wall, a large canvas turned backward. He walked to it and flipped it around. The painting was strange. It showed the same river again, but this time two figures stood on the bridge facing each other. One looked like a man, the other like a woman. Their faces were not detailed, but their postures were filled with emotion. Mina came closer and stared at it. It's us, she whispered. Rayan felt his throat tighten. Yes, he painted us. There was a small envelope pinned to the corner of the canvas. Mina took it down and opened it. Inside was another note in Mr. Rahim's handwriting. My dear Mina and Rayan, life often separates people before it teaches them the meaning of togetherness. This painting is not a memory, it is a message. What you lost was not love, but understanding. If you wish to find peace, finish what I began. The colors on this canvas wait for your hands. Rayan looked at the unfinished parts of the painting. The river stopped midway and the bridge faded into blank space. It was as if Mr. Rahim had left it for them to complete. Mina looked at him quietly. He wanted us to paint it together. Rayan nodded slowly. Maybe that's the truth he wanted us to find. They both stood before the canvas, surrounded by the scent of old paint and sunlight. For the first time in a long while, they felt something gentle rise inside them. Not the old love, but something new, fragile, and real. The mystery was not over yet. but a spark of meaning had begun to glow between them once more. The air inside the studio was thick with silence. Dust floated in the sunlight like slow-moving stars. Rayan and Mina stood side by side, staring at the unfinished painting that seemed to breathe with hidden meaning. The figures on the bridge looked incomplete, their hands almost touching but not quite. The space between them felt heavy, as if it carried all the unspoken words they once left behind. Rayan reached out and ran his fingers along the edge of the canvas. "He must have painted this near the end of his life," he said quietly. "It feels like he wanted to tell us something he couldn't say." Mina nodded slowly. Grandpa always believed art could speak where words fail. Maybe he knew what was happening between us even before we did. Her voice trembled slightly and she turned away, pretending to look at the other paintings. Rayan wanted to say something to comfort her, but the right words would not come. Their past stood between them like an invisible wall. After a long moment, Mina said, "If he wanted us to finish it, we should do it." It was his last wish. Rayan looked at her, surprised. "You mean now?" "Yes, why not? This studio has been waiting all these years. We owe it to him." Rayan hesitated but then nodded. He began to look around for brushes and paint. Many of the jars were dried and cracked, but a few still held color. Mina found 2 chairs and placed them near the canvas. She cleaned the brushes with water from a small tap in the corner, while Rayan mixed the remaining paint. They worked in silence at first. The sound of water dripping and brushes moving was the only noise in the room. Mina started painting the outline of the river while Rayan filled in the bridge. The process felt strange but peaceful. Every stroke of the brush carried pieces of their memories. Laughter from old days, quiet dinners, long drives, and the painful silence that came before their separation. After some time, Mina spoke softly. "Do you remember the first time we came to visit Grandpa after our wedding? He gave us a blank canvas and told us to paint something together." Rayan smiled faintly. "Yes, and we made a terrible mess." He laughed so hard he had tears in his eyes. Mina laughed too, the sound gentle and warm. He said the beauty of art was not in perfection but in effort. Maybe that's what he meant here too. Rayan looked at her and saw a softness in her eyes that he had not seen in a long time. It made him wonder if the distance between them could ever truly disappear. They painted for hours. The sun moved slowly across the sky, and the light in the studio changed from gold to orange. When the shadows grew long, Mina stepped back and looked at their work. "It looks alive again," she said quietly. Rayan wiped his hands with a cloth. "It's not finished yet. The figures still need detail." She nodded and moved closer to the canvas. Together they painted the faces, adding color with care. When they were done, the man and woman on the bridge looked peaceful, their hands finally touching. But as Rayan looked closely, he noticed something new. Near the woman's figure, faint lines formed a small shape. It was the same crescent moon symbol again, hidden under the paint. He leaned closer and the light reflected off the wet surface, revealing small letters inside the symbol. He read them slowly. "Under the light of memory, the truth will rise." Mina came closer. "What does that mean?" "I don't know," Rayan said, thinking hard. "But the last time we saw a message like this, it appeared under special light. Maybe we should use that flashlight again." He took the small flashlight from his bag. When he shined it over the canvas, something incredible happened. The colors shifted and new patterns appeared beneath the paint. Hidden under the surface was another image and a small wooden box, placed near a window with sunlight shining on it. Mina gasped. "That's inside the studio," she said quickly. "Look, the shape of the window and the shelf are the same." Rayan looked at the far side of the room. There was indeed a window with a narrow shelf below it, covered in dust and old brushes. He walked toward it and began to clear the shelf carefully. At first he saw nothing, but then his hand touched something hard beneath a pile of rags. He pulled out a small wooden box covered in paint stains. The same crescent moon symbol was carved on top. "It's another box," Mina whispered. "Just like the one by the river." Rayan opened it carefully. Inside he found a small folded note and a thin silver chain with a ring attached to it. The ring was simple but elegant, engraved with a word in tiny letters, "Unity." He unfolded the note and read it aloud. "To those who paint together, remember this truth. Art is not only color on canvas. It is trust, forgiveness, and love reborn in silence. Let this ring remind you that even broken things can be made whole again." Mina's eyes filled with tears. She looked at the ring and her hands trembled slightly. This was his way of helping us find peace, she said softly. Rayan held the ring in his palm. Maybe he wanted us to forgive each other. Maybe that's the real message behind all this. Mina nodded slowly. Forgiveness, she repeated. We never really gave it to each other, did we? He shook his head. No, we blamed ourselves and each other, but we never forgave. Not truly. They stood there for a while, quiet and thoughtful. The sunlight touched the painting, making the figures on the bridge glow with a golden light. It felt as if Mr. Rahim himself was there, watching them with a gentle smile. Rayan placed the ring back in the box and closed it. This belongs to both of us, he said. We should keep it safe, Mina agreed. We can leave it here for now. Maybe this studio should remain as Grandpa left it. It feels sacred. They locked the box again and placed it on the shelf. The studio grew darker as the evening settled outside. The two stood before the finished painting one last time. It's beautiful, Mina said softly. He would be proud. Rayan nodded. Maybe he wanted to teach us that endings can also be beginnings. When they stepped out of the studio, the air was cool and fresh. The sky had turned a soft shade of purple. They walked toward the car without speaking, each lost in thought. As they drove back, Mina turned to Rayan. Do you think Grandpa planned all this before he passed away? Rayan smiled faintly. I think he knew us better than we knew ourselves. He saw that we might lose our way, so he left a path for us to find it again. When he dropped her off at her house, Mina turned to him before leaving. Thank you for coming with me, Rayan. I don't think I could have done this alone. Rayan looked at her and said, Neither could I. For the first time in many months. They smiled at each other without pain. Later that night, Rayan returned to his apartment. He placed a copy of the painting's photo on his wall. As he sat down, he noticed something strange. The reflection of the painting in the window showed a faint outline of a tree and a hidden path behind the river. He leaned closer to the glass, surprised. It was not in the real painting, and it appeared only in the reflection. He took a deep breath, realizing that Mr. Rahim's mystery might not be over yet. There was still something left to uncover, something that could change everything once again. The night felt quiet, yet Rayan's heart was restless. The reflection of the painting still filled his mind. He could not stop thinking about what he saw in the window. The faint outline of a tree and a path behind the river looked like another clue. He sat at his small table, staring at the photograph he had taken earlier. In the picture, the tree was not visible, but when he looked at the painting's reflection again, the shape was clear. He thought for a while, then took out the letter from the small box they had found at the studio. He read the words once more. Art is not only color on canvas. It is trust, forgiveness, and love reborn in silence. Beneath those lines in faded ink, he noticed something else. A small sentence written sideways read, Truth waits where the tree touches water. Rayan's pulse quickened. The tree in the reflection must mean something real. Maybe Mr. Rahim had hidden something near the river, the same river where they found the first box. He wanted to tell Mina about it immediately, but it was late. He decided to wait until morning. When the sun rose, Rayan drove toward Mina's house. She was surprised to see him so early, standing at her gate with the painting wrapped under his arm. Rayan, is everything all right? She asked, a bit worried. He smiled faintly. I think your grandfather left us one more clue. Mina looked confused. Another clue? Rayan nodded. Last night I saw something in the reflection of the painting. A tree and a path behind the river. And there's a hidden line on the note we found. It says the truth waits where the tree touches water. I think he meant the old riverbank again. Mina stared at him for a moment, trying to process his words. Then she said, You think something is buried there? Maybe, he replied. And I think he wanted both of us to find it together. They decided to go that very morning. The drive was quiet again, but this time the silence felt different. It was no longer heavy with regret. It was filled with curiosity and a shared purpose. When they reached the river, the sun was bright and the air was cool. Birds sang in the nearby trees, and the sound of water brought calmness to their hearts. Rayan placed the painting on a rock and looked around. The bridge stood as it always had, strong and old, while trees lined both sides of the river. There are so many trees, Mina said softly. Which one do you think he meant? Rayan studied the reflection on the painting once more. The tree in the picture had a curved trunk that leaned toward the water, almost touching it. He scanned the riverbank until he saw a tree, that matched the same shape near the far end of the bridge. Its roots stretched into the water like fingers. "That one," Rayan said, pointing toward it. They walked together through the grass until they reached the tree. The ground near the roots was uneven, covered with fallen leaves and old branches. Rayan knelt down and started clearing the area while Mina watched carefully. After a few minutes, his hand hit something solid under the soil. He dug deeper and uncovered a wooden box, smaller than the others but carved with the same crescent moon mark. The wood was old but still strong. Mina gasped softly. He really did hide something here. Rayan brushed off the dirt and opened the box carefully. Inside lay a folded paper, a small paintbrush, and a photograph. The photo showed Mr. Rahim standing beside a younger Rayan and Mina. They were smiling, holding a half-finished painting together. It was the same canvas they had just completed in the studio. Mina took the photograph in her trembling hands. "I remember this day," she said. "It was the last time he painted outside. He told us that some art belongs to the heart, not to galleries." Rayan unfolded the paper inside the box. It was another letter written in the old man's neat handwriting. "To those who found this, I knew the day would come when pain would separate what love once joined. But love that is true never disappears. It only waits behind silence like a path hidden behind water. If you have forgiven each other, then you have found the real treasure. If not, keep searching within." Rayan read the lines again, slower this time. The words felt heavy but kind. They carried wisdom and warmth. "He knew we would be lost one day," Rayan said quietly. "And he wanted us to find our way back." Mina's eyes filled with tears. "He believed in us more than we believed in ourselves." She took the small paintbrush and looked at it closely. The handle had initials carved into it, M and R. It was the same brush they had used years ago when they painted together for the first time. Rayan smiled softly. He kept it all this time, maybe as a reminder that something shared with love never really fades. They sat near the river for a long while, looking at the water and the photograph. The past felt close, but it no longer hurt as before. It was softer now, like a story that had reached peace. As they got ready to leave, Mina turned to him. "Do you think this was the end of his message?" Rayan shook his head. "I'm not sure. But maybe it's not about finding things anymore. Maybe it's about understanding what he was trying to teach us." She nodded slowly. "He wanted us to forgive, to trust again." Rayan smiled. "And maybe to start living again." They drove back home quietly, the box resting between them once more. When they reached Mina's house, she invited him in for tea. It was something simple, but it felt like a step toward healing. The air inside was filled with the smell of fresh tea and old books. As they sat together, Rayan noticed something strange on the back of the photograph. There were faint pencil marks, almost invisible. He tilted it under the light and read the words written there. "Behind every painting lies the final truth. Look where the first began." He looked up at Mina. "Do you know what that means?" She frowned and thought for a moment. "The first painting he ever gave us was the one that started all this. The river painting. Maybe there's more hidden inside it." Rayan placed the cup down and said, "Then we need to check it right now." They unwrapped the painting again and placed it on the table. The colors looked alive in the afternoon light. Rayan turned it around, inspecting the back. At first he saw nothing unusual, but when he pressed gently on one corner, he heard a faint crack. A small piece of the wooden frame came loose, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside was a folded parchment wrapped in cloth. Rayan opened it carefully. It contained an old map hand-drawn by Mr. Rahim. The map showed the same river, the studio, and a mark deep inside the forest on the other side of the water. Next to the mark was a word written in bold letters, "Legacy." Mina looked at it with wide eyes. "Legacy, what does that mean?" Rayan traced the line on the map with his finger. "I think it's the final place he wanted us to go. Maybe something important is waiting there." Mina looked both nervous and excited. "Then we have to find it. If Grandpa called it his legacy, it must mean something greater than all the clues before." Rayan folded the map and placed it back in the frame for safety. "We'll go tomorrow morning," he said. "Whatever it is, we'll face it together." That night, as Rayan lay in bed, he felt both anxious and hopeful. The journey had brought back old memories, but it had also begun to heal what was broken. He knew that tomorrow could change everything once again. Somewhere in the forest, beyond the river, the final secret of Mr. Rahim was waiting. A truth that could complete not only the mystery but also their hearts. Armin sat in the quiet living room of the old cottage, his hands resting on the folded note that had fallen from the back of the painting. The rain outside was soft now, a calm drizzle after the storm. The note had been written in an old style, with careful letters that belonged to Maya's grandfather. It spoke of love, regret, and hope for the future. Armin had read it many times, and each time he understood something new. The note began with a few simple words. If you are reading this, it means time has taken its course, but truth must still find its way to the living. Those words echoed in Armin's mind. It was clear that Maya's grandfather had known something important, something that had been kept hidden from both Maya and Armin. He placed the note on the table and looked again at the painting. The landscape of the small village now seemed more alive. He noticed the small house painted near the edge of the forest, and inside the window, there was a tiny shadow barely visible. He leaned closer and realized that the shape looked like two people holding hands. It was a sign, perhaps a message of connection, forgiveness, or love that never died. Armin sat back, breathing slowly. He understood now why Maya's grandfather had wanted him to have the painting. It was not just a gift. It was a bridge between past and present. It carried the truth of what had been lost and what could still be found. The next morning, Armin decided to visit Maya. He had avoided it for weeks, unsure how she would react, but the message had changed him. He could not keep it to himself. He put the painting carefully in the back seat of his car and drove through the quiet streets. The sky was gray and the wind was cool. It reminded him of the day they first met years ago, when both were young and hopeful. When he reached her house, Maya was in the garden trimming the flowers. She looked peaceful but tired. When she saw him, she stopped for a moment. Her eyes were calm, not angry, just surprised. "Armin," she said softly, "what brings you here?" He held up the painting. "It's about this," he said. "Your grandfather left something inside it. I think you should see it." She frowned, confused, but opened the gate and let him in. They went to the living room, and he placed the painting on the table. The note was still inside a small envelope. He handed it to her carefully. Maya read the words slowly. As she read, her eyes began to fill with tears. The letter spoke of her grandfather's regrets about their family's past. It told the story of how he had once made a decision that hurt both sides, causing a divide between his daughter and her husband's family. The painting was meant to remind future generations that love should never be lost because of pride or misunderstanding. Maya's voice trembled as she said, "He knew everything. He wanted us to find this together." Armin nodded. "I think he wanted us to remember why we were close in the first place. He didn't want the past to destroy the future." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The air was filled with quiet emotion. Not pain, but a kind of peace that comes when old wounds start to heal. Maya wiped her eyes and looked at Armin. "I blamed you for too many things," she said. "Maybe I was angry because I didn't understand myself. Maybe this was meant to remind me that some things can be fixed." Armin smiled faintly. "I made mistakes too. I thought walking away would make things easier, but it only made the silence heavier." She looked at him, and for the first time in years, there was warmth in her gaze. "Do you think we can start again?" she asked quietly. He hesitated. "Not as before, maybe, but we can start as people who understand what really matters." Maya nodded. She reached out and touched the corner of the painting. "He always said art can carry truth better than words," she said. Maybe he was right. For the rest of the afternoon, they talked about the letter, about the years that had gone by, and about the things they had both learned. They were not the same people who once fought over small things. Time had changed them. The message in the painting had reminded them that forgiveness was stronger than pride. When Armin left that evening, the sky was turning orange and gold. The world looked softer. Maya stood at the door watching him go, but this time, there was no bitterness between them. Only quiet respect and an unspoken bond that time could not erase. In the following weeks, Armin restored the painting completely. He cleaned the frame, fixed the cracks, and returned it to Maya's family home. It was hung above the fireplace where the morning light touched it each day. Visitors often admired it, but only Armin and Maya knew the real story behind it. The hidden message had not only changed Armin's life, it had changed Maya's too. They began to work together on a small project inspired by her grandfather's words. They started collecting old family memories and paintings from their village, creating an art center that taught people about love, patience, and understanding. The painting became the symbol of the project. They called it the window of truth, because it showed how one small discovery could open the heart to something greater. Years passed, but the memory of that rainy day never left Armin's mind. Whenever he looked at the painting, he saw more than colors and shapes. He saw forgiveness, courage, and the simple power of a message written long ago by a man who believed in love beyond time. Maya sometimes visited his workshop. They would talk about art, about life, and about how far they had come from their painful past. They laughed more easily now. The silence that had once separated them was gone, replaced by quiet friendship and respect. One day, as the sun set, Armand stood alone in front of the painting. The light from the window fell across the faces of the two tiny figures holding hands in the artwork. He smiled softly and whispered, "Thank you." It was not only for the grandfather who had left the message, but also for the second chance life had given them. The story of the painting became known in the town. People said it had brought peace to two hearts that were once broken. It reminded everyone that love, when true, never really disappears. It may fade, it may change, but it always finds a way to return. And so in that quiet cottage where everything had begun, the painting remained, not as a memory of loss, but as a sign of hope. It told the world that forgiveness can turn pain into beauty. And even after separation, hearts can still find light. That was the real gift Maya's grandfather had left behind. Not just a painting, but a path toward understanding. And for Armin and Maya, it was enough.